Okay, so this will be another example from 5.8, the quadratic inequalities. Um, so we have a little word problem here. Local home builder has determined his profit for selling X homes. So however many houses he sells, we could plug in for X. And we would get the profit P of X equals this big function here, negative 200X squared plus 3000X plus 90,000. So our question is, determine how many homes he would have to produce to have a profit of at least 100,000. Okay, so this is an inequality. We want the profit to be at least 100,000, greater than or equal to 100,000. So what I'm going to do is kind of think about the graph and also do some algebra to solve this. But if we just think in general what this thing looks like without even worrying about too much detail here. Okay, again, the X value in this case is the number of homes that he builds. And the Y value will be the profit. Okay, that's P of X. So depending on how many houses he sells, we can see what kind of profit he would make. And now I know that since the A value is negative, I know I'm going to have a quadratic that opens downward. Okay, I also know my y-intercept is 90,000. Okay, so let's just say that 90,000 is somewhere around here. And this graph just does something like this. Okay, again, I don't know anything specific yet, just I know it opens downward. On your calculator, it would probably continue down here, but that little part doesn't matter because we don't care what happens if we sell a negative number of homes. Okay, so let's say that that's 90,000. And our question now is, how many houses must he sell in order to have the profit be greater than 100,000? Okay, so just to kind of visualize, I think it helps. So let's just say 100,000 is up here somewhere. Okay, and if I just kind of continue that across, okay, we can see that there is some point, there's some number of homes, whatever this X value would be down here. If he sold that many homes, his profit would equal 100,000. Okay, and then as we go to the right, profit's above 100,000, but eventually we get to this other point here. Okay, there's some other number down there where if he gets past that point, he would have his profit going below 100,000. So the whole point to this problem is we want to figure out what are those two little question marks, what number of homes would get us to equal 100,000, and then basically the answer is going to be anything in between that because the profit up there is greater than, it's above the blue line. So our answer is going to be an interval from whatever this number is into that number. And if he sells any number of homes in between those two, his profit will be above the blue line, above 100,000. Okay, so we're going to find out what values are those question marks. And I'm going to do that using algebra. I'm going to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so the profit again was negative 200 x squared plus, let me just make sure we get this right, plus 3000x plus 90,000. And we want that to be, or we're going to try and find out, the first step is find when does it equal 100,000. Okay, and technically our problem is going to be a greater than or equal to problem later, but we're going to solve it. Remember step one of the spit method, solve it as if it were an equation. Okay, and we have a bunch of methods to solve these if they're equations. This one seems like a quadratic formula problem to me, just because the size of the numbers. Factoring kind of seems a little difficult. So let's get it set up equal to 0, so we can figure out what our A, B, and C are. Okay, so 90,000, if I take away 100,000, I'm left with negative 10,000. Okay, so just be careful with your zeros. Don't put an extra 0, don't leave one out. Okay, now we know our A, B, and C because it's set up equal to 0, and we can plug everything in, quadratic formula, right? X equals opposite of B, plus and minus, big square root, B squared, minus 4 times A times C, right? All over 2 times A. Okay, and that's going to give us our answers. Okay, whatever that simplifies out to is going to be whatever this value is and whatever this value is. The two x values when the graph equals 100,000. Okay, we're getting the x values, how many homes. So let's calculate that out. Again, I always encourage you to do the discriminant first. Just find out what this number is. Okay, because there's no use in trying to do the whole problem. Like if that number turns out to be negative, we know we're not going to get a real answer. So the guy would never make 100,000 profit. It wouldn't be possible. So let's see what it is. Okay, let's go to our calculator. All right, let's do the discriminant part. So B, so 3,000 squared minus 4 times my A value was negative 2,000. I'm sorry, negative 200. Times my C value, again, we subtracted the 100,000, so the C value is really negative 10,000. Okay, let me make sure that's right. We got the right number of zeros everywhere. Okay. So my discriminant is actually 1 million. Okay, 1 with 6 zeros after it. That's the discriminant. Okay, so that's good. That's a positive number. We're going to get some answers here. We're going to actually get 2 distinct answers. So let's continue our simplification. Okay, still negative 3,000 plus and minus the square root of, we know that unhighlighted stuff is 1 million. Okay, I know my denominator, if I multiply that out, it's negative 400. Okay, so now the square root of 1 million. Okay, let's figure that out. So the square root of 1 million. Okay, or what we can do is kind of do this numerator now. I can go negative 3,000 plus the square root, and you can either type 1 million or the shortcut is, if that's the previous answer to your problem, second and then the negative sign. Okay, and this is just going to give me my numerator. My numerator is negative 2,000. Okay, for the plus one. So again, I already kind of did this. This is the square root of 1 million still. 4, 5, 6. And doing that numerator, it was negative 2,000 over negative 400. Okay, and let's see what it is when we do the subtraction, because remember, we got to do both. We just did the one with the plus. If we do the one with the minus, so it would be negative 3,000 minus the square root of 1 million. Okay, negative 3,000 minus, this time I'm going to have to type it in, minus the square root of 1 million. Okay, the other numerator is negative 4,000. Okay, so that's this number over here. And now we have 2 little division problems. We can get our 2 answers. Okay, and negative 2,000 divided by negative 400 should give you a positive 5. There's one answer. Negative 4,000 divided by negative 400 would give you a positive 10. Okay, that is our 2 values. Those are our 2 numbers. Those are called the critical values. Okay, and what we just found, again with the graph, we found these numbers. This is a 5, this is a 10. Okay, so we can see if he sold 5 homes, his profit was $100,000. Also, if he sells 10 homes, his profit, again, is $100,000. And we can see based on the graph here, okay, again, that anything in between those, 6, 7, 8, 9, all of those times the profit is above $100,000, so that is what we're looking for. Okay, so that is going to be our answer, any value in between 5 and 10. Okay, and if you want to think of this how we did the number interval line in class the other day, following the spit method, remember that's when you'd have your number line, and you'd say, all right, anything in here is interval 1. Okay, anything between 5 and 10 was interval 2. And anything above 10 and out to the right was interval 3. And we can see from the graph, interval 2 is the one where the values are greater than the 100,000. Okay, so that's just kind of aligning it to that. Okay, so again, our final solution, a couple ways to write this. To write a conclusion, you have to state, what's the answer? The answer is not just 5 and 10. 5 and 10 is where it equals 100,000. But to get a profit greater than that, we have to be in between those. So you could write it 2 ways. You could say, you could write it in words. Okay, you could sell any amount of homes between 5 and 10. Or you could do inequalities. You could say x is greater than or equal to 5. and x must be less than or equal to 10. That's one way to write it, as two separate inequalities. Okay, or maybe even better, a compound inequality, say 5 is less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 10. That kind of says x has to be in between those two numbers, and that's the most concise, kind of the best way to do that. Okay, so that is a quadratic inequality example.